Zoink, Scoob! We have a mystery! Hello, everyone. It's Father Aaron.
The London Minister!
And, wow. So, our heroes are in a pickle. Well, two of them are. Fleetwood and Touchberry have been paralyzed by the Borzalom. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's Hungarian for horror. And that is what it is. We'll find out a bit more about them in a moment. Meanwhile, here stand Fofire and Bob Johnny guarding their paralyzed friends. Ish. And Bob Johnny and Fofire are not in great shape either. I told the story of them fighting the zombies, and I talked about how they were hacking zombies apart. I didn't tell about the fact, forgot this little detail, that with that many zombies, a number of them hit the PCs. And so the PCs aren't doing so well. They're not in good shape at all, right? So the two guards are barely alive. Of course, Touchberry has the healing sword, but he's frozen in place, and they can't use that. They're sort of stuck there in a very weak position guarding their friends. Now, this paralysis does eventually wear off, right? This is like a ghoul's paralysis. It has a time limit. It's longer than a ghoul's, but it does eventually wear off some hours later. The other thing is, it leaves the PCs with a permanent hit point loss. They each lose a hit point. It's not a lot, but you know what? As Touchberry says, if my character dies by one hit point, I am gonna get you. So, so they have a permanent hit point loss after this paralysis. But when it wears off, they are able to walk, although they are very delicate. They are very fragile at this point, because Touchberry and Fleetwood also had suffered a number of hits. Nobody's doing well. They hobble back, though, into the Elven realm, and now the pass is clear. Since the staff of Paranch did whatever the staff did at that moment, the pass is clear, and they have no more troubles. They re-enter the Elven Wood and make their way to the valley in which the king's palace is located. That has become a military camp. Tents are filling the valley as the various clans assemble at the call of the king. You know, while the PCs were going back and forth to get this staff, the call had gone out. It's about 4 days, and so they're beginning to gather. The clans are gathering. It has become a military encampment. As the PCs go to meet the king and to give him the staff, they encounter a Captain Thalion, a grim elf, dark-haired, dark-eyed, very serious. He is one of the captains of the Elven military, one of the chief of the military officers. He greets them, he notices their condition, curtly nods and makes his way off. In they go with not a great impression of this rather rude elf. At any rate, they are ushered in to see the king, who has been expecting them, and they present the staff, not without some attitude. Touchberry and Bob Johnny in particular are not impressed by everything they had to go through to get it. Here's your staff, thanks for telling us about the zombies, right? Zombies? What zombies? The zombies that guard the pass. You didn't mention those. Zombies? There are no zombies. And the party relates the events, and the king is horrified. What? Those creatures you faced, they sound like Borzalom. What are they? Horrors. They are horrors. Raised from the dead, elven warriors. I decided that these will be specifically elven undead. They're raised from the dead. You know, they're like, if a wraith comes from the elves, this is what you get. Okay, instead of raising a human as a wraith, if you raise an elf, this is what you get. They are elven wraiths. They steal your life, freeze you in place. Yeah, we know, we know. I am sorry that this happened. I did not know. What are they doing there? And of course, the party immediately jumps to
Barble!
Yeah, any rate, that's the assumption they make. They need to rest, they need to recuperate, and so they go down and they pitch their tent among all the growing tent city that is filling up the valley to get some rest. Now, during their stay, they of course move in and out among the elves and talk to other elves, and they hear some rumors. One of which is that supplies have been going missing. There is a canyon off of the valley in which the supply depot is kept. Food and arrows mostly have been vanishing. Just missing. The next day they come, the crates are either gone or they're empty. We should investigate this, because of course they know they're in a D&D game, and that's what the DM has prepared for them. So they go off to investigate, and they find, as they arrive, the guards in the midst of discovering more missing supplies. Crates, empty. They pull the lids off, there's nothing inside. Arrows, food, things like this. Where have they gone? What is happening? Not good, not good. We're going to need to watch this. But they do need to rest, and so they do so. The next morning, they're preparing spells, eating breakfast, etc. Second breakfast, when shouts and screams come drifting on the wind, and into the valley come running elves. The bridge has collapsed! The bridge has collapsed! Well, of course, the PCs run to see what has happened. This valley where the King's Palace is in is one of a series of valleys in a sort of area of ridges. Remember, there are mountains to the east, and so that geologic activity kind of continues into the forest. And so this valley goes up, there's a ridge, and then quite close by there's another valley, a deep, deep, steep-sided canyon, over which a bridge had stretched, a rope and plank bridge. Think Indiana Jones. And think Indiana Jones in more than one way, because when they arrived, they discovered the bridge has collapsed. There's bits of it hanging on the opposite side and from this side. And looking down, not Touchberry, he stays away from the edge, but the others looking down, they see bodies strewn on the very, very steep slopes below and at the very bottom. Some of these still groaning and writhing in pain. Fowfire immediately ties a rope around herself, gives the other end to her friends, and goes over the edge, climbing down, using those thieves' skills to climb down to begin rescuing the people at the bottom. Now, as she's doing that, Fleetwood, whose player has taken some first aid courses and assumes that he is quite knowledgeable in all things first aid, and in this case is right, instructs the other elves around to begin cutting saplings, thin branches, to make sort of stretchers or platforms, gurneys, to lift the more seriously wounded out, because you don't want to move them around, right? As he's doing that, Fowfire is reaching the first, someone who's not too badly wounded. This person was close to the end of the bridge, and she unties the rope from herself and ties it around this elf, and shouts up, and then Touchberry and Bob Johnny start hauling on the rope, and other elves are helping to haul the person out. In this way, Fowfire goes from person to person, elf to elf, tying on the rope, and eventually that little platform that Fleetwood and friends have made gets lowered down, and they put the more seriously wounded on that, and up there to doing this rescue operation. Eventually, the rescue operation becomes a recovery, as now the bodies they are finding, especially the ones further down, are not wounded but dead. It takes a while as they gather up the dead, during the process of which Lord Silverian shows up. Silverian, very high commander, actually in charge of the entire preparation. Someone second only to the king. He shows up, and so does Captain Thalion. They had been at a distance, Thalion at the other end of the valley, Silverian back at his own home. They arrive and take charge of the entire operation. Lord Silverian makes the remark that this bridge had been recently repaired, the ropes replaced. You have to do that every once in a while. With a rope bridge, you've got to replace the ropes. These ropes are no more than a month old. They should have been plenty sturdy. Thalion has the bridge hauled up, and sure enough, at the end, the ropes show some fraying, but most of the rope is sliced clean through. There is a broken part, but it's no more than a quarter of the thickness of the rope, which shows breakage. Most of it is a clean cut. Someone had cut this through and left it with only a small amount remaining to collapse under any serious weight, namely a number of elves crossing it at the same time. The PCs are now certain someone is trying to sabotage the war efforts. They decide that what they're going to do is watch the supply glade. They don't know when something like this could happen, although Fleetwood does ask, are there any other big targets that would be obvious? And so there's not really any large place. The camp itself, I mean, the tents are all close together. They could be set on fire. Well, there's a lot of elves there, though, right? Let's watch that supply glade. Okay, how are you going to do it? We're going to break up into teams. Never split the party. Not so much because you could be attacked and overwhelmed, but because it really gives headaches to the DM. Though in this case, it turned out pretty cool. Bob, Johnny, and Fleetwood, as elves, will blend in, so they're going to make themselves useful during the day and hang around and keep an eye on it that way. Touchberry and Fowfire will take the night shift. Touchberry, as a halfling, can hide very well in the wilderness, and Fowfire, as a thief, hiding in shadows, right? This glade is in a canyon that opens off of the side of the valley, and at the top, the whole thing is wooded except in the very center where it's been cleared and used as a supply depot. Well, they're going to go up to the edge of the canyon so they can see down in. Now, as it goes up, the woods there thin out at the very crest, but they're going to get at a spot where they can see down in. Right. So, Touchberry and Fowfire go off to rest so that they can, first of all, recover some more hit points, but also so that they have enough, they're well rested enough to take the night shift. Meanwhile, the two Elven brothers go in, and they decide what they'll do is find the Fletchers, who are preparing the arrows, and they will volunteer to transport them, to help transport them, right? And the Fletchers are happy to accept this because it means they don't have to send apprentices
You're fired.
to go haul them. They can send one or two apprentices, but then, these two outsiders can help, these two other elves can help haul them, and they don't have to give up skilled apprentices who are helping to make arrows. It just will increase production. Great. So that's what they do. And during the day, they go back and forth a number of times. The guards are a little suspicious. What are these two outsiders doing? They left the Elven Wood over a year ago. What are they doing back? Well, we heard our people were gathering for war, and we've come back to help. We want to be part of our people's struggle. Okay, well, fine, whatever. Great. They are pretty well satisfied with that. And the two, go back and forth, and they don't hear a lot during the day. They don't see anything untoward. But near the end of their shift, they do hear that they're actually clearing out the guards from the glade because special preparations are being made for the night. And it will not be safe to be in the glade. Well, that makes sense then that that Touchberry and Fowfire will be up on the ridge, and they actually go, that was a good idea to go up there. That's where you want to be. It's not going to be safe down in the glade. They assume it's a spell of some kind is being laid on the thing. They don't know, right? But out they go, and they switch. Now, Touchberry and Fowfire don't just go marching in. They go into the forest out of the valley itself, make their way up the ridge, and work their way toward the canyon that way to overlook the glade from there. They don't go walking in the front door, as it were. So they go creeping through the woods as the sun is setting and dusk is setting in. As Fleetwood and Bob Johnny, they decide they're going to go to the king and find out what these special preparations are, if they can, right? Now, much has been made among the group. Don't tell anyone what we're doing, right? Don't tell anyone because we don't want to tip off the thief we want to be able to catch the thief. The problem with this, of course, is that they're now sneaking around at night near the weapons cache, near the supply depot. They're going to look suspicious. Very suspicious. And asking the king what preparations are being made, that's probably going to make them look more suspicious still. That's what they do. Now, at this point, I use a bit of an editing trick. You've watched reality shows where they make it look as if things were closer. I'm thinking of The Amazing Race, for instance. They make it look like the teams were neck and neck when they could have been hours apart. You don't know, right? It's all in the editing. Well, I do a little bit of that. I stick with Touchberry and Fowfire, and I leave the conversation with the king to the side, even though that conversation would happen first. I reason they're far enough away from the supply canyon that anything they learn, they're not going to be able to get to their friends in time. I also relate the subsequent events first from Touchberry's point of view, just to build suspense. Because the two of them, having achieved the rim of the canyon, spread out about 30 feet apart. They want to be close enough they could get to each other within one round, but far enough apart that they give, different perspectives, and it's less obvious. Two people sitting together is easier to see than individuals. So that's what they do. And they hide up there, right? They get their hide rolls. And I roll for them. And Touchberry, easy, not a problem. Faux fire, less so. Faux fire, less so. But we don't know that yet, now do we? No. I tell Touchberry, you're crouching there, you're looking down, and I ask, well, what are you watching? So I've got my eyes on the glade. I don't want to miss anything down there. Perfect. Faux fire says the same. I've got my eyes on the glade. Anything moves down there. Perfect. Because what approaches does not approach from land. I tell Touchberry, you're watching, and suddenly you hear very soft, what sounds something like a flapping sail. A sail caught in the wind and snapping just once, but it's very soft, immediately followed by Faux Fire's scream. I'm going to go to her carefully. I'm going to creep over there carefully. Well, creeping carefully is going to take longer than just running there, so you're not going to get there in one round. It'll take you two if you're going softly, right? Meanwhile, Faux Fire, you're looking down into the canyon, scanning the glade for any movement, when boom! Out of the sky comes screeching two claws that tear into you. The glade is being protected by two giant owls.